The smoke billowed black and angry from the elementary school windows, flames licking at the morning sky. Firefighters shouted commands, their voices strained with urgency as parents screamed names of children still trapped inside. That's when they saw him, the massive German shepherd with battle-scarred fur charging toward the burning building. "Titan, no!" James Anderson's desperate voice cracked as he lunged forward, only to be restrained by two firefighters. The dog that everyone in Millfield had feared, had petitioned to have destroyed, paused at the doorway. His amber eyes met James's for just a moment before he disappeared into the thick black smoke. "They said he was too dangerous to live among decent folk," Eleanor Thompson whispered, her weathered hand trembling against her lips. "That monster would hurt our children." But to understand how we got here, we must go back to the beginning. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Millfield, Oregon hadn't always been a struggling town. Once prosperous with 3 lumber mills and a brick factory, it now limped along with shuttered storefronts and fading optimism. Among its newer residents was James Anderson, a 42-year-old former Army sergeant who'd returned to civilian life with more baggage than just the duffel he'd carried home. His medical discharge papers didn't mention the nightmares, the flinching at car backfires, or how he sometimes found himself staring into middle distance, lost in places he couldn't describe to others. James had inherited his uncle's craftsman bungalow on Maple Street, a blessing that quickly revealed itself as a burden of property taxes and repairs he could ill afford. The foreclosure notices had begun arriving with grim regularity, each one thinner than a combat knife but cutting just as deep. "Dad, there's no milk again," Jessica would point out, her 16-year-old exasperation barely masking worry. She'd grown too accustomed to managing their household, to watching her father battle demons she couldn't see. Their relationship had frayed since her mother's death 3 years earlier, leaving them like awkward roommates sharing grief neither knew how to discuss. Next door lived Eleanor Thompson. 78 years of steel-spined propriety wrapped in floral house dresses. Widowed for 18 years, she kept her bird feeders filled, her sidewalk swept, and her opinions about the neighborhood readily available. "That Anderson man keeps to himself too much," she'd tell anyone who'd listen. Not natural for a man his age. On Tuesdays, James volunteered at Millfield Animal Shelter, donating what little dog food and supplies he could afford. It was the one commitment he never broke. No matter how bad the pain in his reconstructed knee or how sleepless his night had been. The shelter director, Martha, had stopped asking why. Some men found their peace in church. James Anderson found his sitting quietly with abandoned animals that asked nothing of him. That Tuesday changed everything. James noticed the crowd of shelter staff gathered outside a kennel in the back area, an area usually off-limits to volunteers. Through gaps between their bodies, he glimpsed a mass of gray and black fur, unnaturally still. 110 pounds, one staff member whispered. "Most German shepherds don't get past 85. As the staff dispersed, James saw him, a mountain of a dog, ears permanently alert despite his stillness, body mapped with scars that told stories of cruelty. Their eyes met across the concrete floor, and something ancient and wordless passed between them. "That one's scheduled for tomorrow," Martha said, appearing at his elbow. "Too aggressive. Nobody can get near him." But James was already moving toward the kennel, drawn by something he couldn't explain. Martha's hand shot out, gripping James's arm with surprising strength. "I wouldn't, James." "That dog's not like the others." But James was already at the kennel door, kneeling despite his bad knee's protest. The massive German shepherd hadn't moved, amber eyes tracking James with an intelligence that seemed almost unnerving. "His name's Titan," Martha explained, keeping her distance. "Found him roaming the interstate 3 months ago. Nobody claimed him. Can't say I'm surprised." James extended his hand, palm down, toward the chain-link fence. The staff collectively gasped. Titan remained motionless for a long moment. Then slowly, so slowly it barely registered, his tail shifted, just once against the concrete floor. "He's been here 3 months?" James asked, eyes never leaving the dog. "State mandates we hold strays for at least 5 days," Martha sighed. "We kept extending it, hoping someone with experience might take him. But he's too much, too big, too unpredictable. After he growled at the county inspector last week, we ran out of options." "I'll take him," James said, the words surprising even himself. Martha laughed nervously. "James, you can't be serious. This isn't a shelter pup needing socialization. This dog has history." "So do I," James replied quietly. The paperwork took an hour, most of it consisting of liability waivers and Martha's repeated warnings. When she slid the final form across her desk, her expression was grave. 30-day trial, James. If there are any incidents, any at all, you bring him back, and we do what needs doing, promise me." James nodded, signing his name with steady determination. Getting Titan into his truck proved surprisingly simple. The dog followed basic commands with military precision, but maintained a careful distance from everyone except James. The first night was hell. Titan refused to enter the house until James had gone in first and turned on every light. The dog inspected each room methodically as if clearing a building during combat operations. When James finally set down a makeshift bed in the living room, Titan stood guard instead, positioned between the couch where James slept and the front door. At 2 a.m., James awoke to whimpering. Titan was twitching violently in his sleep, paws scrambling against invisible threats. When James touched his shoulder, the dog came awake with a snarl that died the moment he recognized James. They stared at each other in the half-light, two veterans of different wars, recognition flowing between them. "We're okay," James whispered. "We're home." The morning brought Jessica's fury. She'd returned from an overnight study session to find a monstrous dog in their living room. "Are you insane?" she hissed, keeping the kitchen island between herself and Titan. "That thing looks like it eats children." "He's just a dog, Jess," James replied, pouring her cereal. "A dog that needed a home. We can barely feed ourselves." Her voice cracked. "The power got shut off again last week while you were at VA. I had to use my babysitting money to turn it back on. But sure, let's add a horse-sized dog to the budget." James had no answer for that. The financial truth hung between them, another failure in his growing collection. "You care more about that monster than me," Jessica muttered, grabbing her backpack. She slammed the door on her way out, leaving James and Titan in humming silence. Walking Titan through the neighborhood became an exercise in social avoidance. Neighbors crossed the street when they approached. Children were hurriedly ushered inside. Only Mrs. Garza from the corner house showed any kindness, commenting on Titan's distinguished appearance before continuing her gardening. The encounter with Eleanor Thompson came on day 5. She was retrieving her mail when James and Titan rounded the corner, her face drained of color. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson," James called, keeping his tone deliberately light. Eleanor clutched her envelopes to her chest like armor. "Mr. Anderson, what on earth is that creature?" "This is Titan. He's my new companion." Eleanor backed toward her porch steps. "That is not a pet, Mr. Anderson. That is a liability with teeth." "Does the neighborhood association know about this?" Before James could answer, Titan's ears flicked forward. He turned his massive head toward Eleanor's yard, then issued a low, rumbling growl. "See?" Eleanor gasped. "Aggressive. I'll be calling the association president this afternoon." "He's not growling at you," James said, following Titan's gaze. Near Eleanor's prized rose bushes, a coiled garden hose lay in an unusual pattern. "I think there's something by your flowers." Later, after the animal control officer had safely removed the juvenile rattlesnake from Eleanor's garden, her thanks were stiff but genuine. Still, her parting words stung. A dangerous animal is still dangerous, even when it does something useful. As days passed, James noticed peculiarities in Titan's behavior. The dog responded instantly to certain phrases that seemed almost like military commands. "Secure perimeter" sent him checking doors and windows. "On guard" put him into an alert posture James recognized from service dogs he'd encountered overseas. Most telling was Titan's reaction to helicopter sounds from the television. Immediate, focused attention followed by expectant stillness. The first real breakthrough with Jessica came unexpectedly. She was walking home from her friend's house when a car slowed alongside her. The man inside asked for directions, his smile not reaching his eyes. When Jessica instinctively stepped back, he opened his door. Titan, who had slipped out through the broken back fence James hadn't yet repaired, appeared silently at Jessica's side. His presence alone, head level with the car's window, body rigid with controlled aggression, was enough. The car accelerated away, tires squealing. Jessica buried her face in Titan's thick fur when they reached home. her anger temporarily forgotten. "He knew something was wrong, Dad, before I did." That night she slipped Titan extra dinner when she thought James wasn't looking. The town meeting announcement appeared on community bulletin boards the following week: discussion of dangerous animal ordinance enforcement. James found the anonymous petition on the windshield of his truck, already bearing 27 signatures, demanding Titan's removal from Millfield. Sarah Wilson, the town's veterinarian, became an unexpected ally after James brought Titan in for a wellness check. While other patients and their owners huddled in the waiting room's far corner, Sarah examined Titan with professional curiosity. "These aren't ordinary scars," she observed, running her hands along his flank. "Some are surgical, and his muscle development is unusual, targeted like he was trained for specific tasks." She glanced up at James. "Where did you say he came from?" "The shelter didn't know," James replied. "Found him on the interstate." Sarah's examination revealed more concerns: healed stress fractures in 2 legs, evidence of malnutrition followed by rapid weight gain, scars consistent with electrical burns. The $340 bill for examination and vaccines represented half of James's monthly disability check, but he paid without complaint. James's nightmares intensified with Titan in the house, not because of the dog, but because something about Titan's presence unlocked doors in James's mind he'd kept firmly shut. He began remembering details from the IED explosion that had ended his career: the copper taste of fear, the white-hot pain, the faces of the men who didn't make it home. Each night he'd awake gasping, only to find Titan's solid warmth pressed against the couch, a steady anchor to reality. The confrontation at Millfield Park happened on day 17. James had deliberately chosen early morning to exercise Titan when the park would be nearly empty. They were running simple drills, sit, stay, heel, when Pamela Brooks arrived with her twin kindergartners. "You!" she called, clutching her children to her sides. "Dogs must be leashed in this park." James held up the training lead in his hand. "He is leashed, ma'am. We're just working on commands." "That's not a dog, it's a wolf or something." Her voice carried across the empty playground. "My children use this park. What is the city thinking, allowing that monster here?" Other early morning park-goers began to gather, drawn by the commotion. Titan, sensing James's tension, moved closer to his side, making him appear even larger. "He's not dangerous," James insisted, feeling the familiar clench of anxiety in his chest. "He's a trained German shepherd." "Trained for what?" demanded a man James recognized from the hardware store. "Fighting? Look at those scars. That thing's been through hell and probably caused plenty of it too." As the crowd grew, so did their courage and volume. James felt the situation slipping away, just as control often did in his dreams. Titan remained perfectly still beside him, but his stillness only seemed to unnerve the onlookers more. "Keep that beast away from our children!" someone shouted. James knelt, clipped on Titan's lead, and began walking away, the weight of stairs heavy on his back. He didn't see the child's thrown stick until it struck Titan's flank. The dog flinched but didn't turn, didn't growl. His disciplined response somehow more unnerving than aggression would have been. That afternoon, local social media exploded with warnings about the monster on Maple Street. By evening, James had received 3 anonymous phone calls suggesting everything from muzzles to poison. He sat on his porch steps, Titan a solid presence beside him, and wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Not for himself, but for the dog who had already endured so much. In the fading light, Eleanor Thompson watched from behind her curtains, telephone in hand, uncertain whom to call or what to say. James first noticed the man 3 days after the park incident. Middle-aged, trim-build, watching from across the street as James worked with Titan in the front yard. When their eyes met, the stranger nodded slightly before walking away, unhurried but deliberate. "You saw him too, didn't you?" James murmured to Titan, whose ears had tracked the man's departure. The dog's subtle shift in posture told James everything he needed to know. That evening, Sarah Wilson called. "James, can you bring Titan in tomorrow morning? Before regular hours?" Her voice carried an edge of professional excitement. "I found something during his examination I'd like to look at more closely." At 7 a.m., Sarah's ultrasound wand moved methodically across Titan's shoulder, revealing a small, dense shape beneath the skin. "It's a microchip," she explained, "but not the standard shelter type. It's military grade, the kind used for high-value working dogs. I've only seen them in textbooks. James felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. Can you tell who it's registered to? Sarah shook her head. It doesn't ping on regular scanners. I only found it because I was checking for muscle damage from the scarring. She hesitated. James, what kind of dog did you really rescue? That night, after Jessica had gone to bed, James searched online for military working dog programs. Pages of German Shepherds and tactical vests appeared, some in desert settings, others training at domestic facilities. He was about to close his laptop when a small news article caught his attention. Pentagon Auditing Special, Canine Training Programs. The piece, dated 18 months earlier, mentioned budget irregularities in something called Operation Cerberus. 3 additional searches led him to a veterans forum where former handlers discussed their service dogs. One thread contained a cryptic exchange. Anyone else serve with Cerberus dogs? My unit had one in Helmand. Different level. Thread locked. PM me if you need to discuss. James rubbed his tired eyes. Whatever Titan's past, it wasn't standard military service. The next morning he discovered Jessica in the backyard, secretly working with Titan. She flushed when she saw him watching. He knows all these commands I didn't teach him, she explained, embarrassment coloring her voice. Watch this. She made a series of hand gestures, and Titan immediately dropped to his belly, eyes alert, body still. It's like military stuff. How long have you been doing this? James asked, surprise tempering his tone. Jessica shrugged. A few days. He's not what everyone thinks he is, Dad. She hesitated. He sleeps outside my door at night. Did you tell him to do that? No, James replied, watching his daughter and the dog with newfound appreciation. That's his choice. The incident with Eleanor Thompson occurred the following day. James was repairing his fence when he heard the elderly woman's startled cry. Dropping his hammer, he ran toward the sound, finding Eleanor frozen on her porch steps with a broken grocery bag at her feet. Titan stood at the property line, watching intently. Mrs. Thompson, are you hurt? James called, hurrying over. That creature was in my yard, she accused, pointing a trembling finger at Titan. Near my bird feeder. But as James apologized and began gathering her spilled groceries, Titan's behavior caught his attention. The dog wasn't looking at Eleanor, but at something near her feet. Following his gaze, James spotted the small, injured cardinal partially hidden beneath the porch step. I think he was trying to show you this, James said gently, pointing out the wounded bird. It must have hit your window. Eleanor's expression shifted from fear to confusion as she watched James carefully lift the dazed cardinal. Titan maintained his distance but remained focused, his body language concerned rather than predatory. He found an injured bird. Disbelief colored her voice. He's gentle with small, vulnerable things, James explained, fashioning a temporary nest from his handkerchief. Would you like to help me with this little one? Titan will stay on our side of the yard. That afternoon, as they worked together to create a recovery box for the cardinal, Eleanor studied Titan from a safe distance. My Herald trained hunting dogs, she finally offered. That's no ordinary dog, Mr. Anderson. That's a dog with purpose. The stranger approached James directly 2 days later, appearing beside him at the hardware store so suddenly that James nearly dropped the pipe fittings he was purchasing. Sergeant Anderson, the man said quietly. Not a question. Frank Miller. We need to talk about your dog. James felt his combat instincts surge. Who are you? Someone who knows what you've got living in your house. Miller's eyes flicked to the exit. Not here. Meet me at Riverside Park in an hour. Bring the dog. Against his better judgment, James went. Miller was waiting on a secluded bench, standing as they approached. Titan's reaction was immediate and conflicted. Recognition, alertness, but no aggression. He remembers me, Miller noted, maintaining his distance. Good. Talk, James demanded. Your dog's name isn't Titan. It's Alpha. He was part of a specialized training unit, Operation Cerberus. Miller's expression was unreadable. I was his handler for 14 months. James tightened his grip on Titan's lead. What kind of operation? The classified kind. Started legit. Enhanced military working dogs for special operations. Evolved into something else. Miller's gaze never left Titan. He was the best of the program. Too good, maybe. Why did he end up in a shelter? Miller's jaw tightened. Because he escaped. After the program was officially terminated, some assets were repurposed, privately. James felt sick. Assets? You mean the dogs? Some things went wrong, Miller continued. Alpha here didn't take well to certain training methods, broke containment during transport. Been looking for him for months. Well, you found him, James said coldly. Now what? Miller's eyes finally met James's. That depends on you, Sergeant. Back home, James found Jessica waiting anxiously. Dad, someone called asking questions about Titan. When I wouldn't tell them anything, they said the dog is dangerous government property. Her voice quavered. What's going on? Before James could answer, a police cruiser pulled up outside. Chief Michael Reynolds, a man James knew only from community bulletin board photos, approached with the stiff formality of someone executing an unpleasant duty. Mr. Anderson, we've received multiple complaints about your dog. I need to do a welfare check. Inside, the chief's assessment was thorough and, to James's surprise, not entirely unsympathetic. Impressive animal, he commented, watching Titan follow basic commands. Military. Rescued, James replied carefully. Reynolds nodded, making notes. Look, Anderson, I'm a dog person myself, but this situation's getting political. Mayor's involved now. The mayor? For a dog complaint? Harrison Williams takes community safety personally, Reynolds said, his tone suggesting there was more to the story. He's called a special council session for tomorrow night. I'd be there if I were you. The council chambers were packed when James arrived the following evening. He'd left Titan home with Jessica, sensing the dog's presence would only inflame tensions. Mayor Harrison Williams presided from the center chair, his silver hair and tailored suit projecting authority. At 60-something, he had the confident demeanor of someone accustomed to being obeyed. This emergency session addresses community concerns regarding a dangerous animal at 457 Maple Street, Williams began, his resonant voice filling the room. We have 27 citizens who've signed a petition requesting immediate action. For the next 40 minutes, James endured testimonials about Titan, mostly from people who had never interacted with the dog but had heard stories. When his turn to speak finally came, James approached the microphone with the steady calm he'd relied on during mission briefings. Titan is a trained service dog recovering from abuse, he stated, the partial truth easier than trying to explain Miller's revelations. He poses no threat to this community. In fact, he's already protected members of it. From the back of the room, a small voice interrupted. He saved Grandma's bird. All heads turned to see Eleanor Thompson, elegant in her church dress, leaning on her cane. That animal Mr. Anderson took in. He found an injured cardinal in my yard. Showed me where it was hiding. Gentlest thing I ever saw, her voice strengthened. Now, I don't know much about big dogs, but I know cruelty when I see it, both to animals and to people. Forcing this man to give up his dog based on nothing but fear seems plenty cruel to me. A murmur rippled through the room. Mayor Williams' jaw tightened visibly. Mrs. Thompson, while we appreciate your input, this isn't about one incident with a bird. This is about community safety. Then give him a chance to prove it's safe, Sarah Wilson called from her seat. I've examined this dog professionally. He's well-trained and responsive. Set conditions. Establish a timeline. The mayor's expression darkened. I'm not gambling with children's safety, Dr. Wilson. 30 days, James proposed suddenly. Give us 30 days to demonstrate Titan's training and temperament. If there's a single legitimate incident in that time, I'll surrender him immediately. The room fell silent as Williams considered. His gaze, when it met James's, contained something beyond civic concern, something personal and cold. 30 days, he finally agreed, his tone suggesting he expected failure. With conditions. The dog must pass a formal assessment. It must be muzzled in public at all times. And at the first sign of aggression, Chief Reynolds has my authority to seize it immediately. As the crowd dispersed, Sarah approached James. This isn't normal, you know. I've treated actually dangerous dogs that didn't get this kind of attention. It's not about Titan, James realized aloud. It's about me, or something else entirely. Outside the building, James was surprised to find Miller waiting in the shadows. 30 days isn't much time, Sergeant. For what? James demanded. What aren't you telling me? Miller glanced toward the council chambers, where Mayor Williams was shaking hands with supporters. Williams has a particular interest in Operation Cerberus. Ask yourself why. Before James could respond, a small figure approached tentatively, a boy of about 9, with wide eyes fixed not on the adults but on a point just behind them. James turned to find Titan sitting quietly at the edge of the parking lot, Jessica holding his lead. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said. "He got really anxious. Broke through the back screen door. I couldn't stop him." The boy moved closer to Titan, his movements slow and deliberate. His mother hurried after him, alarm clear on her face. "Logan, stop!" But Logan Reed, whom James now recognized as the nonverbal autistic child from Jessica's school volunteer program, had already reached Titan. While the adults froze, the boy carefully extended his hand. Titan lowered his massive head, allowing the touch with surprising gentleness. "Dog," Logan whispered, according to his wide-eyed mother, the first word he had spoken in public in over 2 years. In that moment, as Logan's fingers traced the scars on Titan's face without fear, James understood they had just gained their most powerful advocate, and perhaps their greatest responsibility. The morning after the council meeting, James rose before dawn. Sleep had been elusive, his mind cycling through Miller's cryptic warnings and the impossible 30-day timeline. When he entered the kitchen, he found Titan already alert, watching him with steady eyes that seemed to understand the weight they both carried. "We've got work to do, buddy," James murmured, running his hand along the dog's scarred flank. He converted the backyard into a training ground, using lumber scraps to construct basic obstacles. By mid-morning, sweat soaked his shirt despite the mild Oregon spring. Jessica emerged from the house, silently offering a glass of water before sitting on the porch steps to watch. "You really think you can change everyone's mind in a month?" she finally asked. James wiped his brow. "We don't need to change everyone's mind, just enough minds." "The mayor hates him," Jessica observed. "Did you see his face when Logan touched Titan? Like he was watching something dangerous happen, even though it was beautiful." James nodded, remembering the tight anger in William's expression. Something's not right there. Frank Miller arrived unannounced that afternoon, carrying a worn duffel bag. "Training equipment," he explained at James's questioning look. "Proper stuff, not that homemade obstacle course you've got going." James blocked the gate. "Why are you helping? What's your angle?" Miller's weathered face revealed nothing. "Let's just say I owe him," he replied, nodding toward Titan. "What they did to these dogs, it wasn't right." Over Jessica's objections, James allowed Miller into the yard. The man moved with practiced efficiency, setting up specialized training markers and retrieving equipment that looked military-grade from his bag. Alpha, Titan, was trained for detection and protection work, Miller explained. Specialized skills. But they pushed him beyond normal parameters, used methods that are controversial. "Controversial?" James repeated. Miller's eyes darkened. "Cruel. Effective, but cruel." And for the next 2 hours, Miller demonstrated handling techniques, showing James how to reinforce commands without triggering Titan's defensive responses. The dog worked with intense focus, occasionally glancing at James as if for reassurance. "He trusts you," Miller noted. "That's rare, given what he's been through." "What exactly was Operation Cerberus?" James pressed, seizing the opening. Miller checked his surroundings before answering. "Started as a legitimate military program, enhanced canine units for special operations. Dogs with exceptional capabilities, trained to perform beyond standard parameters." He crouched to examine Titan's scarred leg. "But after the official shutdown, some assets continued training privately. Black budget stuff. For what purpose? High-end security contracts. Protection for people who don't ask questions about methods." Miller's tone was deliberately neutral. Titan was in the second phase. When he escaped during transport, he'd already shown resistance to certain protocols. Before James could ask more, Jessica called from the porch. "Dad, Mrs. Thompson is at the front door." Eleanor Thompson stood on the welcome mat with uncharacteristic hesitancy, a covered dish in her gnarled hands. "Chicken casserole," she announced. "My Harold always said no man thinks straight on an empty stomach." Over dinner, Eleanor revealed herself as an unexpected ally. "I've been making calls," she said, serving Jessica a second portion. "My bridge club, the garden society, my church circle, telling them what I saw with the cardinal." "You're advocating for Titan?" James couldn't hide his surprise. Eleanor sniffed. "I'm advocating for fairness, Mr. Anderson. Fear makes fools of people my age. We've seen too much change, lost too much control. Easy to blame something big and different." Her gaze drifted to where Titan lay beside Logan, who had arrived with his mother for a supervised visit. "But that boy hasn't spoken 3 words together since his father deployed, and today he told that dog a whole story about butterflies. That matters more than our fear." As Eleanor departed, she paused on the porch. "Harrison Williams wasn't always mayor, you know. He had some private security company before. Very hush-hush about it. Never liked dogs either. Campaigned against the dog park when it was proposed." The next morning, Sarah Wilson arrived with a professional training collar and additional medical supplies. "Consider it my contribution," she said, demonstrating the proper fitting. "I've also drafted a veterinary statement regarding Titan's temperament for your file." "My file?" James raised an eyebrow. "You'll need documentation for the assessment," Sarah explained. "Medical history, training log, witness testimonials. Build a case like you're going to court, because essentially, you are." James's nightmares intensified as the days passed. In the darkness, his mind replayed fragments of his final mission, the blinding flash, the concussive force lifting him off his feet, the copper taste of blood. But now, new elements intruded: snarling dogs, William's cold eyes, Jessica crying out for help. He would wake, gasping, drenched in sweat, to find Titan's steady presence beside him. The dog's vigilance a silent comfort. During one particularly bad episode, James found himself on the kitchen floor, disoriented, convinced he was back in the ambush. Titan pressed against him, the weight and warmth anchoring James to reality until the flashback subsided. "You understand, don't you?" James whispered into the dark. "You've been there too." Jessica found them like that in the morning, man and dog asleep against the refrigerator, and silently covered them with a blanket before starting breakfast. The financial strain became increasingly apparent. Titan's specialized food, medical care, and training equipment depleted James's already limited resources. The mortgage payment was now 60 days past due, and the final foreclosure notice had arrived, giving him 90 days to settle the debt or vacate. "We could sell Mom's jewelry?" Jessica suggested one evening, her voice small. "No." James's tone left no room for discussion. "That's your inheritance." "What good is inheritance if we don't have a home?" she challenged, showing flashes of her mother's fire. The solution came unexpectedly. After Logan's remarkable progress, word spread among local families with special needs children. A mother of twins with sensory processing disorders asked if her children could meet Titan. Then came a veteran with PTSD similar to James's, seeking the comfort of a trained companion. By the 3rd week, James had established informal therapeutic sessions in his backyard. Donations welcome but not required. Eleanor organized a bake sale through her church, the proceeds earmarked for canine community service. Jessica created social media accounts documenting Titan's gentle interactions with children and seniors. Small donations trickled in, not enough to save the house, but sufficient to cover immediate needs. Logan visited daily, his progress remarkable. Where once he had been entirely nonverbal in public, he now spoke freely to Titan and increasingly to James and Jessica. His mother, Diane, explained through tears how Logan had begun carrying a photo of Titan to school, using it as a comfort object during stressful situations. "The special education director says she's never seen such rapid improvement," Diane confided. "Whatever that dog is doing, it's reaching parts of Logan that therapy couldn't touch." Meanwhile, Frank Miller continued his mysterious assistance, arriving with training equipment and departing with cryptic warnings. During one session, as Titan demonstrated exceptional search abilities, Miller revealed more about the dog's background. "They trained him for search and rescue originally," Miller explained, watching Titan locate a hidden item with uncanny precision. Could find people under rubble in collapsed buildings. Natural talent. Then they modified the training for other purposes. "What purposes?" James pressed. Miller's expression darkened. "Let's just say finding people who don't want to be found." Each day brought small victories. Titan passed the basic temperament assessment administered by the county animal control officer with perfect scores. Eleanor's cardinal recovered and was released in a small ceremony attended by several curious neighbors. Logan spoke his first full sentence to someone other than Titan, asking James if the dog could attend his upcoming birthday party. Yet opposition remained. Anonymous notes appeared in James's mailbox, crude drawings of dogs with targets on them, warnings to get out while you can. Twice James found his truck tires slashed. Chief Reynolds increased patrols past the house but seemed reluctant to investigate further. Political pressure, he admitted when James confronted him. Mayors made this his personal crusade. Can't figure why. Sarah Wilson's investigation into Operation Cerberus yielded disturbing information. The program was shut down after a congressional inquiry, she reported, showing James redacted documents she had obtained through veterinary research channels. Ethical concerns about training methods and deployment objectives. What kind of methods? James asked, though he already suspected. Pain compliance, sensory manipulation, stress-induced performance enhancement. Sarah's voice was clinically detached, but her eyes reflected disgust. They weren't just training working dogs, they were creating weapons with 4 legs. The revelation sent James to his computer late into the night. Using his military connections, he accessed forums where former handlers discussed their experiences. Most references to Cerberus had been scrubbed, but occasional mentions remained. Enough to piece together that the program had operated at a private facility under Department of Defense contracts before being officially terminated. What caught James's attention was a single comment in a thread about private security firms. Williams Tactical absorbed some of the Cerberus assets after shutdown. Same handlers, same methods, different paychecks. Williams Tactical, Mayor Harrison Williams. The connection crystallized when James found an archived news photo showing a younger Williams at a security industry conference standing before a backdrop featuring a 3-headed dog logo. The caption identified him as CEO of Williams Tactical Solutions, specializing in advanced security systems and personnel training. The next day, James noticed increased surveillance. A black SUV parked across from the house for hours. Men in plain clothes photographing his property from the street. When he mentioned it to Miller, the trainer's expression hardened. "They're getting nervous," Miller said. "You're gaining support and the assessment date is coming up. Time for contingency plans." "Who's they?" James demanded. Miller sighed. "Williams isn't just your mayor. He ran the private contracting that took over parts of Cerberus when the military pulled funding. Titan wasn't just any dog in the program, he was the prototype. The success story Williams used to secure private contracts worth millions. Then why is he so determined to destroy him now?" "Because Titan knows things," Miller replied grimly. "Dogs remember who hurt them. And some of the training methods would constitute animal cruelty charges if proven. Williams can't afford that kind of scrutiny, not with his political ambitions." That evening, as James documented the day's training progress, he received an unexpected visitor. Chief Reynolds arrived alone, out of uniform, his expression troubled. "This isn't an official visit," he said, declining the offered coffee. "But you should know the mayor's pushing hard to move up the assessment. He's claiming community anxiety requires immediate resolution." "That's against our agreement," James protested. Reynolds nodded. "Which is why I'm telling you. Something's off about all this, Anderson. I've been chief here for 12 years, and I've never seen Williams this fixated on anything." After the chief left, James called an emergency meeting with his growing support network. Sarah, Eleanor, Diane, and Logan, Frank Miller, and several families who had benefited from Titan's therapeutic presence gathered in his living room. "We need to accelerate our timeline," James explained. "I believe Mayor Williams intends to violate our agreement." Eleanor straightened her spine, reminiscent of the school teacher she had once been. "Then we accelerate our advocacy. I'll contact the newspaper editor. Harold's nephew owes me a favor." Sarah nodded. "I can organize a demonstration of Titan's therapeutic benefits at my clinic. Invite council members to observe." Diane squeezed Logan's shoulder. "We can gather testimonials from the families, show concrete evidence of his positive impact." As the planning continued, Miller drew James aside. "This won't be enough," he warned quietly. "Williams won't stop because some kids love the dog. He has too much at stake." "And what do you suggest?" James asked, frustration evident. Miller hesitated. "I've been gathering evidence about Cerberus for 2 years, documenting training methods, financial irregularities, ethical violations. I was almost ready to take it to federal authorities when Titan escaped. His eyes met James's. I need access to Titan's implanted chip. It contains data that could corroborate my evidence. You want to extract it? James asked, alarm rising. It's the only way to prove the connection between Williams and what happened to these dogs. Miller's expression was grave. But it would mean surgery, risk. James shook his head. Not without more information. Titan's been through enough. That night, as rain pattered against the roof, James faced the financial reality of his situation. The foreclosure deadline loomed just 60 days away. Even with community support, saving the house seemed impossible. The thought of relocating Titan, of disrupting Logan's progress and abandoning the fragile network of support they'd built, felt like failure. On the kitchen table, Jessica had left college brochures open to veterinary programs, her subtle way of expressing hope for a future that seemed increasingly uncertain. James traced the glossy pages, remembering his late wife's dreams for their daughter. Catherine had always believed Jessica would do extraordinary things if given the chance. "What would you do, Cat?" he whispered to the empty kitchen. The silence offered no answers. A soft whine drew his attention. Titan stood in the doorway, head tilted in concern. The dog padded over, resting his chin on James's knee, a gesture of comfort James had never taught him. "We're in trouble, buddy," James admitted, stroking the dog's scarred head. "I don't know if I can keep my promises to everyone." Titan's warm weight against his leg was steady, unflinching. The dog, who had endured cruelty beyond imagination, still offered comfort without reservation. In that moment, James understood what Catherine would have said. Some promises matter more than others. The next morning brought unexpected news. Eleanor arrived at the door, newspaper in hand, her expression triumphant. "Page 3, she announced, spreading the Millfield Gazette on the kitchen table. The article was modest but prominently placed. Local dog brings healing to special needs children. The accompanying photograph showed Logan reading aloud to Titan, the boy's face animated with joy. The piece detailed the impromptu therapy program James had established, including testimonials from parents and a statement from Sarah Wilson regarding the documented benefits of animal-assisted therapy. "Harold's nephew came through," Eleanor said with satisfaction. "And he tells me the online version is being shared across the county." The response was immediate. Calls came from neighboring communities asking about the program. The local television station requested an interview. James's social media followers doubled overnight. William's reaction was equally swift. By afternoon, a certified letter arrived ordering James to surrender Titan for immediate assessment or face criminal charges for harboring a dangerous animal. The document bypassed the agreed-upon 30-day period, citing executive emergency powers. "He's panicking," Miller observed when James called him. "This is good." "Good?" James echoed incredulously. "He's trying to seize Titan tomorrow." "Because he's scared of what's coming. Trust me, Anderson. Keep Titan visible. Keep him in the public eye. Williams won't risk moving against him with cameras rolling." The television interview was scheduled for the following morning. As James prepared Titan for his media debut, checking the specialized training collar and rehearsing basic commands, Jessica approached with rare hesitation. "Dad, I found something weird online." She showed him her tablet, open to archived business records. "Mayor Williams' security company went bankrupt 4 years ago after some lawsuit, but it looks like he started another company under his wife's maiden name right after. Same logo, different name." James studied the incorporation documents with growing unease. The new company, Trifecta Security Solutions, listed its primary business as specialized security personnel and asset training. "Assets," James murmured, remembering Miller's words. "They mean the dogs." "There's more," Jessica continued, scrolling to bookmarked pages. "They have a training facility outside Portland. I found these satellite images." She zoomed in on aerial photographs showing a compound surrounded by high fences with what appeared to be kennel structures and training yards. "Jess, how did you find all this?" She shrugged. "School project on local businesses." Then I got curious. Her expression turned serious. "Dad, if the mayor was doing something illegal with these dogs and Titan escaped, then Titan is evidence," James finished grimly, "and Williams needs him silenced." The realization brought clarity. This wasn't about a dangerous dog. It was about covering up years of illegal activity. The assessment wasn't meant to be fair. It was designed to ensure Titan would fail, giving Williams legal justification for euthanasia. That evening, as James finalized preparations for the interview, a soft knock at the back door revealed Chief Reynolds, again out of uniform. "Thought you should know," he said without preamble. "Mayor's bringing in an outside expert for tomorrow's assessment. Guy named Kramer, from some security outfit in Portland. I ran his credentials. They're legitimate, but thin. Feels staged." "The whole thing is staged," James replied, explaining his discoveries. Reynolds' expression hardened as he listened. "I became a cop to protect people, Anderson, not to help politicians cover their asses." He straightened. "Do your interview tomorrow. Make it public, make it positive. I'll delay the assessment paperwork, cite procedural concerns." As the chief turned to leave, he paused. "My brother came back from Afghanistan with scars nobody could see. Had a service dog that saved his life more than once. Never thought much about what those animals go through until now." After Reynolds departed, James gathered his unlikely allies in the living room. Eleanor, Sarah, Diane, and Logan, Jessica, and Miller formed a circle around Titan, who seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. "Tomorrow's bigger than an interview or an assessment," James told them. "It's about exposing the truth. Whatever happens, we need to ensure Titan stays safe and visible. No opportunities for Williams or his people to isolate him." As the group dispersed with assignments and contingency plans, James felt a strange calm descend. The fight had evolved beyond one man and his dog. It had become about justice, about exposing corruption, about standing against cruelty, whether directed at animals or people. Later, as James checked the locks before bed, he found Jessica sitting on the porch steps, staring at the night sky. He settled beside her, his knee protesting the motion. "Mom would be proud of you," Jessica said quietly, "fighting for something that matters." "She'd be proud of both of us," James replied, putting his arm around her shoulders. "Whatever happens with the house, Jess, we'll figure something out for college, I promise." Jessica leaned into him. "I know, Dad, but right now, Titan comes first. He needs us more." From inside, Titan watched them through the window, his scarred face reflected in the glass. A warrior who had found his true purpose not in combat, but in healing. The morning dawned with an unseasonable warmth, the kind of spring day that whispers of summer. James rose early, his military habits reasserting themselves in times of high alert. He found Titan already awake, sitting at attention by the front window, ears forward, watching the empty street. "Big day, buddy," James said softly, resting his hand on the dog's massive shoulder. Titan leaned slightly into the touch, his amber eyes never leaving the window. The television crew arrived at 9, a reporter named Caitlin Burke and her cameraman, both from the Portland affiliate station. James had expected local coverage, not regional interest. "Your story's gaining traction online," Caitlin explained, setting up in the backyard where James had established his impromptu training area. "The whole war hero and his battle-scarred dog versus small-town politics angle has people invested." James winced. "That's not exactly—" "It's exactly what we need," Eleanor Thompson interrupted, arriving with a platter of cookies for the crew. At 78, she had dressed for the occasion in her Sunday best, pearl earrings gleaming. Sometimes you need a little drama to get people's attention. Families began arriving for what James had structured as a demonstration of Titan's therapeutic work. Logan and his mother came first, followed by twin girls with sensory processing issues, then an elderly veteran in a wheelchair. By 10 o'clock, the backyard held a cross-section of the community that had formed around Titan, ordinary people whose lives had been quietly transformed by the dog everyone else feared. The interview began with James explaining Titan's rescue, carefully omitting Miller's revelations about Operation Cerberus. As he spoke, Titan performed his usual routines, gentle interactions with children, fetching items on command, demonstrating his search abilities by finding hidden toys. "He seems remarkably well trained," Caitlin observed, "almost professionally so." James nodded. "Military dogs often are. We believe Titan had specialized training before he was abandoned. When Logan demonstrated how he read aloud to Titan, a skill he had been unable to perform in school due to anxiety, several crew members visibly softened. The cameraman wiped his eye surreptitiously while capturing Logan's small hand resting comfortably on Titan's scarred head. "Logan spoke 3 words in public last year," Diane explained to the camera. Since meeting Titan, he's speaking in full sentences. His therapist calls it miraculous. As the demonstration continued, Sarah Wilson provided professional context. What we're seeing is the therapeutic power of the human-animal bond, particularly with a dog as responsive and intuitive as Titan. His own trauma history seems to create a unique connection with people who are suffering. Eleanor's testimony came next, her refined diction lending gravity to her conversion story. I've lived in this town for 53 years, and I've never seen an animal change lives this way. I was afraid of him myself until he showed me kindness I didn't deserve. The cameras had just turned to Jessica for her perspective when Chief Reynolds's cruiser pulled up, lights flashing but siren silent. Behind it came a black SUV with government plates and a third vehicle, Mayor Williams's town car. "Looks like we have company," Caitlin murmured to her cameraman, who immediately swiveled to capture the approaching confrontation. Mayor Williams emerged from his vehicle with the smooth confidence of a politician, though his expression tightened at the sight of the news crew. Behind him came a trim man in tactical pants and a polo shirt bearing a three-headed dog logo. Kramer, presumably. Frank Miller appeared simultaneously from the side gate, positioning himself casually but strategically near Titan. "Mr. Anderson," Williams began, his public smile firmly in place. "I see you've organized quite a gathering. Unfortunately, we have official business to conduct." His gaze shifted to the camera. "A routine public safety assessment, nothing more." "We're actually in the middle of an interview," James replied evenly. "As you can see, Titan is demonstrating his therapeutic work with community members." "Admirable," Williams conceded, his tone suggesting otherwise. "But the assessment was scheduled for today, and Mr. Kramer has traveled from Portland specifically for this purpose." Chief Reynolds cleared his throat. "Actually, Mayor, there are some procedural concerns with the assessment order. The paperwork appears to have bypassed standard protocols." Williams' smile tightened. "Chief, we discussed this. The situation warrants emergency measures." Caitlin Burke stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Mayor Williams, could you explain why this particular dog requires emergency assessment when he's clearly performing valuable community service? Our viewers would be interested in understanding the urgency." The camera's unblinking eye seemed to unsettle Williams momentarily. "Public safety is always urgent, Ms. Burke. Particularly when children are involved. Like these children?" Caitlin gestured toward Logan and the twins, who were now standing protectively near Titan. "They seem remarkably safe." The confrontation might have continued in this political vein had fate not intervened. From the elementary school 3 blocks away, a fire alarm suddenly pierced the morning. Heads turned as black smoke began rising above the tree line. Chief Reynolds' radio crackled to life. "All units, fire reported at Millfield Elementary. Multiple classrooms involved, possible entrapment." "Weekend science camp," Jessica gasped. "They're doing experiments today." Reynolds was already running for his cruiser. "Dispatch, this is Chief Reynolds. I'm en route. Alert County Fire Services for mutual aid." James reacted instinctively. "Titan, come!" The dog was at his side instantly as James grabbed the specialized vest Sarah had provided, a modified service dog harness with reflective stripes. "Jessica, stay with Eleanor and the others." "Dad?" she began to protest. "Not negotiable," he cut her off, striding toward his truck with Titan beside him. Williams moved to intercept. "Anderson, we're not finished here." "Actually, we are," James replied, not breaking stride. "Chief Reynolds can arrest me later if necessary." Caitlin Burke signaled her cameraman. "We're following this," she decided. "Load up." The scene at Millfield Elementary was chaos. 2 classrooms in the East Wing were actively burning, flames visible through shattered windows. Teachers and volunteer parents had evacuated most children to the playground, but the frantic head count revealed 3 missing students and 1 adult, trapped in the science lab where the fire had apparently originated. The town's volunteer fire department had arrived but was clearly undermanned. The chief, a burly man named Peterson, was organizing entry teams when James pulled up with Titan. "Anderson, this is an emergency scene. You need to clear out," Peterson called. "Sergeant James Anderson, Army Corps of Engineers," James replied, falling back on his military authority. "My dog is search and rescue trained. He can help locate survivors." Peterson hesitated only briefly before nodding. "We've got 3 kids and Mrs. Abernathy unaccounted for. Science lab and adjoining classroom. Structural integrity is compromised. Roof could go any minute. James knelt before Titan, securing the vest and looking directly into the dog's eyes. This is what you were trained for, buddy. Find them. The transformation was immediate. Titan's entire demeanor shifted from therapy dog to working professional, his focus absolute. As James approached the building with Peterson, they were stopped by a desperate mother clutching a child's backpack. "My son Logan is in there," she sobbed. "He hid during the evacuation. He does that when he's scared." James's blood ran cold. Logan Reed, the nonverbal boy? He's been doing better, starting to speak, but when he's frightened, her voice broke. Chief Reynolds arrived, immediately coordinating with county emergency services en route. When he spotted James with Titan, his protest died unspoken as he assessed the situation. "The dog can help?" he asked simply. James nodded. It's what he was trained for. "But I need to go in with him." The fire chief provided James with basic protective gear, a turnout coat, and breathing apparatus. 10 minutes maximum," Peterson warned. "After that, I'm pulling everyone out. That roof won't hold." Inside, the smoke was disorienting, thick and acrid from burning chemicals. James kept low, following Titan's confident movement through the haze. The dog showed no fear, methodically checking spaces a human might overlook. In the classroom adjoining the science lab, Titan alerted, pawing at a supply closet door. Inside, James found 2 terrified fourth graders huddled beneath a shelf. "It's okay," he reassured them, his voice muffled by the breathing mask. "We're getting you out." He guided the children to waiting firefighters at the entrance before returning with Titan to continue the search. The science lab was a blackened ruin. Equipment melted, ceiling tiles falling in flaming chunks. Titan moved with unerring precision, navigating debris that would have stymied human rescuers. A weak cry drew their attention to the preparation room behind the lab. There they found Mrs. Abernathy, the science teacher, unconscious from smoke inhalation, her body protectively curled around a small figure. Logan Reed, conscious but frozen in terror. "Logan, it's Mr. Anderson," James called, kneeling beside them. "Titan is here too. We're going to get you out." At the mention of Titan, the boy's eyes focused. The dog pressed forward, gently nudging Logan's hand. Something in the familiar contact broke through the boy's paralysis. "To Titan," Logan whispered. "That's right," James confirmed, checking Mrs. Abernathy's pulse. "She needs help, Logan. Can you go with Titan while I carry her?" Logan nodded, his small hand clutching Titan's harness as James lifted the unconscious teacher. They had nearly reached the exit when a thunderous crack announced the ceiling's imminent collapse. James had just enough time to push Logan and Titan forward before a falling beam struck him across the shoulders, driving him to his knees. Pain exploded through his bad knee as he struggled to maintain his hold on Mrs. Abernathy. Through graying vision, he saw Titan reappear through the smoke, barking urgently. "Go!" James gasped. "Get help!" But Titan refused to leave. Instead, the massive dog positioned himself under James's arm, bracing his weight like a living crutch. With this unexpected support, James managed to stagger forward, still carrying the teacher, using Titan's strength to compensate for his failing knee. They emerged from the building seconds before the roof collapsed in a shower of sparks and burning debris. Emergency personnel swarmed forward, taking Mrs. Abernathy from James's arms and guiding him to a waiting ambulance. As paramedics checked his vitals, James became aware of the news camera capturing everything. Beyond it stood Mayor Williams, his face a mask of conflicted emotions as he watched Titan being examined by Sarah Wilson nearby. The dog had suffered minor burns to his paws, but had otherwise emerged unscathed. "He went back in for you," Frank Miller said quietly, appearing at James's side. "After getting the boy out, he went back deliberately." "He wouldn't leave," James confirmed, wincing as a paramedic examined his shoulder. Miller's weathered face showed something like respect. "That wasn't training, that was choice." The impromptu command center buzzed with activity as county fire units arrived to contain the blaze. Logan, examined and cleared by paramedics, refused to leave Titan's side. The boy spoke clearly to the emergency workers, answering questions about what had happened in the science lab. A failed experiment, a panicked teacher, his own instinctive hiding. "Titan found me," he told anyone who would listen. "He's a hero dog." The phrase caught on, repeated by rescued children, then parents, then bystanders. As James watched, the narrative transformed before his eyes, the dangerous animal becoming the community's savior. Caitlin Burke conducted rapid interviews with witnesses, her professional demeanor barely containing her excitement at the developing story. When she approached James, her first question was unexpected. "Sergeant Anderson, was Titan specifically trained for search and rescue operations?" His performance seemed exceptionally skilled. Before James could formulate a safe answer, Mayor Williams interrupted. "This incident changes nothing regarding the legal assessment requirement," he insisted, though his usual confidence seemed brittle. "Heroic actions aside, proper protocols must be followed." As Williams spoke, Titan limped over to James, pressing against his leg in a gesture both protective and seeking reassurance. In that moment, with cameras rolling and the community watching, the contrast could not have been more stark. The politician demanding adherence to process versus the wounded dog who had just risked everything to save a child. Caitlin Burke captured it perfectly in her closing remarks to the camera. "Sometimes heroism comes from unexpected places." Today in Millfield, a dog once deemed too dangerous to live among decent folk taught us all a lesson about courage, loyalty, and the true meaning of service. This is Caitlin Burke reporting live from what locals are already calling Titan's Rescue. The morning after the fire, James awoke to find his story had gone national. Major networks had picked up Caitlin Burke's footage, broadcasting images of Titan leading children to safety and returning to help James. Social media erupted with the hashtag #HeroDog, accompanied by the most dramatic images. Titan emerging from smoke with Logan holding his harness, James and Titan supporting each other as they escaped the collapsing building. But the triumph was short-lived. James noticed Titan's labored breathing first, then his unusual lethargy. When the dog refused breakfast, a previously unimaginable occurrence, alarm bells rang. "Something's wrong," James told Sarah Wilson over the phone, describing the symptoms. "He was fine last night during the checkup." "Bring him in immediately," Sarah instructed, her professional calm belied by the urgency in her voice. "Smoke inhalation effects can be delayed." By the time James managed to load Titan into his truck, the dog's condition had deteriorated dramatically. His breathing came in shallow pants, his powerful body trembling with effort. Jessica rode in the back seat, her hand resting on Titan's head, whispering reassurances neither of them believed. Sarah was waiting when they arrived, quickly assessing Titan's condition before rushing him into the treatment area. James and Jessica paced the waiting room floor, the celebratory atmosphere of yesterday replaced by sick dread. When Sarah emerged an hour later, her expression confirmed their fears. "It's not good," she said quietly, leading them to a private consultation room. "The smoke inhalation damaged his lungs, but that's not the primary concern. The fire aggravated pre-existing internal injuries, likely from his previous abuse." "What kind of injuries?" James asked, his throat tight. "Scar tissue around his heart and lungs. Evidence of previous trauma, possibly deliberate." Sarah's clinical tone couldn't hide her anger. "Someone used extreme methods on this dog, James, the kind that should put people in prison." "Can you treat it?" Jessica asked, her voice small. Sarah hesitated. "It's beyond my capabilities here. He needs specialized surgery at a veterinary hospital in Portland. The problem is," she trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. "Cost," James finished for her. "What are we talking about?" "Minimum of $15,000 for the surgery alone, plus aftercare, medication." Sarah met his eyes directly. "Even then, the prognosis is guarded. The amount might as well have been $15 million for all James could afford it. His bank account held less than $300. His credit cards were maxed, and the house itself was weeks away from foreclosure." "There must be something we can do," Jessica insisted, tears streaming down her face. "After everything he's done, we can't just—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I'll make calls," Sarah promised. "There are charitable foundations for cases like this, but they take time, and Titan doesn't have much of that right now." James stood numbly. "Can we see him?" Sarah led them to the treatment area where Titan lay on a padded table, an oxygen mask fitted over his muzzle, IV lines running into his foreleg. Despite his weakened state, the dog's tail thumped once in recognition as James approached. "Hey, buddy," James whispered, carefully placing his hand on Titan's shoulder. "You're one hell of a hero, you know that?" Titan's amber eyes, clouded with pain but still alert, fixed on James with complete trust. The same trust he had shown running into a burning building, the same trust he offered despite years of human cruelty. Something broke inside James at that gaze. "I'm going to make some calls," he told Sarah, stepping outside to collect himself. His first call was to Frank Miller, who answered on the first ring. "I heard," Miller said without preamble. "How bad?" "Terminal without surgery," James replied, the words like ash in his mouth. 15,000 I don't have." There was a pause. Williams would consider this a convenient solution to his problem. "This isn't about Williams anymore," James snapped. "This is about a dog who saved children's lives yesterday." "It's always been about Williams," Miller corrected. "And what Titan represents? Evidence of systemic cruelty that could ruin powerful people." James leaned against his truck, suddenly exhausted. "Unless you've got 15 grand or a miracle, I don't see how that helps us right now." "I'll see what I can do," Miller promised, before disconnecting. Back inside, James found the waiting room filling with unexpected visitors. Eleanor Thompson arrived with members of her church group. Logan and Diane Reed came bearing handmade get-well cards. Jessica had already started an online emergency fundraiser, but the brutal math remained. Even with the community's support, they couldn't raise enough quickly enough. By evening, Titan's condition had stabilized but not improved. Sarah allowed James to stay after hours, setting up a cot beside the treatment area. As night deepened, James sat beside Titan, one hand resting on the dog's massive head. "I'm sorry, buddy," he whispered. "I should have protected you better." Memories surfaced unbidden. Titan standing guard that first night. Titan gently taking treats from Logan's trembling hand. Titan pressing against James during nightmares. Not just a dog, but a kindred spirit who had endured the unendurable and emerged with his capacity for love intact. Mayor Williams arrived unexpectedly at 9 the next morning, impeccable in a tailored suit despite the early hour. His expression as he regarded Titan's weakened form was unreadable. "I thought we'd be adversaries to the end, Anderson," he said quietly. "Now it seems nature has intervened." "Well, what do you want?" James asked, too drained for pretense. "To offer a solution." Williams straightened his tie. "The town will cover euthanasia costs, a painless end with dignity. Given yesterday's events, we could arrange a small memorial service. The community would appreciate the closure." The calculated political maneuvering, turning Titan's death into a PR opportunity while ensuring his permanent silence, struck James like a physical blow. "Get out," he managed through clenched teeth. Williams sighed. "Be reasonable. Even if by some miracle you found the money, the dog's quality of life—" "His name is Titan," James interrupted, rising to his full height. "And he has more dignity lying there than you ever will. Get out before I forget I'm a civilian now." After Williams departed, Sarah returned with Dr. Thomas Gardner, a renowned veterinary surgeon she had consulted about Titan's case. "The damage is severe but not necessarily fatal with proper intervention," Gardner explained, reviewing Titan's scans. "The surgery is complex, essentially repairing years of accumulated trauma exacerbated by yesterday's smoke. Inhalation. But I've seen worse cases recover." "Then you'll do it?" Hope flickered briefly in James's chest. Gardner's kind eyes reflected genuine regret. "I would if I could, Mr. Anderson. But the hospital requires payment before specialized procedures. It's not my policy, but I'm bound by it." As the surgeon departed with promises to check back that evening, James faced the unbearable decision he had been avoiding. Keeping Titan alive in his current state meant prolonging suffering. The compassionate choice, the loving choice, might be the one Williams had callously suggested. Jessica found her father sitting beside Titan, the dog's massive head cradled in his lap, tears streaming silently down his weathered face. "Dad?" she whispered. "I can't save him, Jess," James admitted, his voice breaking. "After everything, I can't save him." Jessica knelt beside them, placing her hand over her father's. "We raised almost 3,000 online," she said. "Mrs. Thompson emptied her vacation fund. Logan's mom donated their car repair money." Her voice caught. "It's still not enough." They sat together in silence, the steady beep of monitoring equipment marking precious time slipping away. Outside the treatment room window, reporters had begun to gather, drawn by the tragic turn in yesterday's heroic narrative. The community that had finally embraced Titan might now bear witness to his end. "He deserved better," James said softly, "from all of us." The call came as dusk settled over Millfield, casting long shadows through the clinic windows. Sarah answered, her professional demeanor momentarily slipping as she listened to the voice on the other end. "Yes, he's still here," she said, glancing toward James. "I'll tell him immediately." She handed the phone to James, her expression bewildered. "It's Portland Memorial Veterinary Hospital. They say Titan's surgery has been approved and paid for. They're sending transport." James took the phone, confusion battling with desperate hope. "This is James Anderson." "Mr. Anderson, this is Dr. Melissa Chen at Portland Memorial. We've received full payment for Titan's procedure and aftercare. Our emergency transport team is en route to you now. They should arrive within 30 minutes. "There must be a mistake," James said, his voice unsteady. "I didn't authorize—" "The payment was processed anonymously through our charitable foundation," Dr. Chen explained. "The paperwork is complete. All we need is your consent for treatment." As James struggled to comprehend this unexpected lifeline, the clinic door opened. Frank Miller entered, accompanied by a man James didn't recognize. Middle-aged, conservatively dressed, with the unmistakable bearing of federal law enforcement. "Sergeant Anderson," the stranger said, presenting credentials. "Special Agent Robert Keller, FBI. I need to speak with you regarding Operation Cerberus and your dog's involvement." Sarah immediately moved to block access to the treatment area. "My patient is in critical condition. Whatever this is, it needs to wait." "Actually, it can't," Miller interjected. "The transport team will be here soon, and there are things James needs to understand before decisions are made." Agent Keller nodded toward the phone in James's hand. "I take it you've just learned about the surgery funding?" "You're responsible for this?" James asked. "Not directly, but my investigation made it possible." Keller glanced at the treatment area where Titan lay. "That dog is key evidence in a federal investigation into military contract fraud, animal cruelty, and public corruption. His recovery isn't just a personal matter anymore." The next hour passed in a blur of revelations. As medical technicians prepared Titan for transport, Agent Keller explained that Frank Miller was not the trainer he had claimed to be, but an undercover investigator who had infiltrated Operation Cerberus 2 years earlier. "We've been building a case against Williams and his associates for 18 months, Keller explained in the privacy of Sarah's office. "The program began legitimately, but evolved into something else entirely when Williams took private control. They developed training methods that violated every ethical standard. Methods that produced remarkable results but at unconscionable cost to the animals." "And Titan?" James asked. "Alpha was their success story, the dog they used to secure millions in private security contracts, but he was also the one who couldn't be broken completely." Miller's expression held genuine admiration. He complied enough to stay alive but maintained something they couldn't touch. When he escaped during transport to a demonstration for potential buyers, Williams lost his primary selling point. The specialized transport team arrived with efficiency that spoke of military precision. As they transferred Titan to their vehicle, Keller continued his explanation. "Williams has been searching for this dog since his escape. When Titan appeared at your local shelter, facial recognition software from security cameras alerted Williams's team. He's been maneuvering to eliminate the evidence ever since." "Evidence?" James repeated. "The microchip Sarah found contains more than identification," Miller explained. "It records physiological data, heart rate, stress indicators, response patterns. Standard for assessing training effectiveness, but in this case it documented abuse. Every shock, every punishment, every stress test beyond humane limits, all recorded and time-stamped." The transport team's leader approached, clipboard in hand. "We're ready to move, sir. Dr. Gardner is standing by at Portland Memorial." As James signed the consent forms, a commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window, they could see Mayor Williams arguing with Chief Reynolds in the parking lot, gesturing angrily toward the transport vehicle. "Right on cue," Keller muttered. He must have picked up chatter about the transport. Reynolds was physically blocking Williams from approaching, his stance making it clear he was acting in an official capacity. When Williams attempted to push past, the chief's hand moved deliberately to his service weapon. "Looks like your police chief has chosen a side," Miller observed. "I need to go with Titan." James said, refocusing on what mattered most. Of course, Keller agreed. But there's something you should understand first. Once that chip is removed and analyzed, everything changes. Williams and his associates will face federal charges. This goes beyond Millfield. There are powerful people involved. I don't care about Williams right now, James replied. I just want to save my dog. Outside, the confrontation had escalated. Williams' voice carried clearly through the evening air. That animal is dangerous and under town jurisdiction. You're obstructing justice, Chief. Reynolds' response was measured but firm. No, sir. I'm preventing interference with evidence in a federal investigation. Please step back or I will arrest you. As James moved toward the transport vehicle, Williams spotted him. Anderson, this is your doing, isn't it? Some publicity stunt to garner sympathy. It's over, Mayor, James called back, suddenly bone-weary of the conflict. Let it go. It's not over until I say it's over, Williams shouted, his carefully maintained public persona crumbling. That dog belongs to my program, my research. The slip was subtle but damning, an admission captured by the news crew that had gathered at the first sign of the official-looking transport vehicle. Caitlin Burke's microphone picked up every word, her expression sharpening with journalistic instinct. Your program, Mayor Williams? She pressed, moving closer. Could you clarify what you mean by that? Williams faltered, suddenly aware of the camera and gathering crowd. His gaze darted to Keller, recognition and panic flashing across his features as he registered the federal agent's presence. No comment, he snapped, retreating toward his car. This matter is under town jurisdiction, and I'll be consulting our attorney. As the transport vehicle prepared to depart, Jessica arrived with Eleanor Thompson and several other community members. She rushed to her father's side, breathless with news. Dad, you won't believe it. The fundraiser exploded online after someone shared it on a national veterans network. We've raised almost $8,000. The surgery's been covered, James explained, guiding her toward the vehicle where Titan lay sedated for transport. Anonymously, Eleanor stepped forward, her dignified composure temporarily abandoned. Is he going to be all right? They think so, James replied, the words still feeling unreal. A specialist is waiting in Portland. Well then, Eleanor straightened her cardigan with military precision. You'd better get moving. We'll hold the fort here. As James climbed into the transport beside Titan's stretcher, Agent Keller approached the window. There will be questions later, Sergeant. A formal statement about what you've observed since adopting him. After the surgery, James insisted, his hand resting protectively on Titan's sedated form. After the surgery, Keller agreed. And Anderson, the anonymous donor, it wasn't the FBI. The revelation nagged at James during the tense drive to Portland. While medical technicians monitored Titan's vital signs, James pondered who could have possibly provided such a sum. The community fundraiser Jessica mentioned wouldn't have reached the necessary amount in time, and he had no wealthy connections or relatives to call upon. At Portland Memorial, Dr. Gardner was waiting with a team of specialists. The renowned surgeon's confident demeanor offered the first real hope James had felt since Titan's collapse. We'll take good care of him, Gardner promised, efficiently directing Titan's transfer to a preparatory area. The procedure is complex, but I've reviewed his scans thoroughly. His size and general health work in our favor. And the chip? James asked, remembering Miller's explanation. Gardner's expression turned serious. We've been briefed about its evidentiary importance. Special protocols are in place for preservation and chain of custody. As Titan was wheeled toward surgery, James found himself facing the hospital's administrative director, a woman with a tablet and puzzled expression. Mr. Anderson, I need to clarify something about the financial arrangements, she began. The anonymous donation came with specific instructions. After covering Titan's care, the remaining funds, approximately $50,000, are designated for establishing a rehabilitation program for military working dogs, with you as the director. James stared at her in disbelief. There must be some mistake. The surgery was $15,000. Who would donate? $65,000 total, she confirmed, checking her tablet. The donor was quite specific about the allocation. They also left this for you. She handed him a sealed envelope containing a single sheet of paper. The message was brief, typed without signature. Some debts can never be repaid, but must be attempted nonetheless. What was broken by cruelty can only be healed by kindness. Continue the work you've already begun. As James tried to process this cryptic message, his phone rang, Jessica calling for an update. In the background, he could hear Eleanor's voice mingling with others, the community vigil apparently growing rather than dispersing. "They just took him into surgery," James reported. "The doctor seems confident." "Dad, you need to see what's happening here," Jessica said, her voice tinged with amazement. "The whole town has shown up at the clinic, and Chief Reynolds just arrested Mayor Williams on some kind of federal warrant." Outside the surgical suite, a television mounted in the waiting area was tuned to regional news. The lead story featured Caitlin Burke standing outside Millfield Town Hall, reporting on the breaking scandal. Sources confirm that federal authorities have seized records related to a private security firm previously owned by Mayor Harrison Williams, she announced. The investigation reportedly centers on animal cruelty allegations and misappropriation of military research funds. Meanwhile, the German Shepherd at the center of this story is undergoing life-saving surgery after his heroic actions at yesterday's elementary school fire. James sank into a waiting room chair, the crushing weight of the past weeks temporarily lifting. Whatever happened next, Titan would never again face the cruelty of his past. The truth, long buried under layers of political maneuvering and deliberate obfuscation, was finally emerging into the light. 6 months transformed Millfield in ways James could never have imagined. The maple trees lining his street had shifted from spring green to summer fullness and now to autumn gold, marking the passage of time as steadily as Titan's recovery. The German Shepherd lounged on the front porch, his massive form relaxed but alert, watching a group of children playing across the street. Though his coat still bore the scars of his past, his amber eyes reflected a peace that once seemed impossible. The slight limp, a permanent reminder of the surgery and his heroism, did nothing to diminish his regal bearing. "Your 10 o'clock is here," Jessica called from the doorway. At 19, she'd deferred college for a year to help establish what locals now called the Second Chance Training Center. The former Anderson residence, saved from foreclosure through a combination of donations and a veterans assistance program, had been transformed with the addition of training yards, rehabilitation equipment, and modest kennel facilities. James nodded, watching as a young Army veteran made his way up the walk, a service dog application clutched nervously in his hand. Each new applicant brought the same mixture of hope and hesitation, the same wounded spirit seeking healing through connection. "Mr. Anderson?" The young man extended his hand. "I'm Kevin Phillips. We spoke on the phone about the service dog program." "James, please," he corrected with a smile. "And this is Titan, our senior trainer." Titan rose at the introduction, approaching the veteran with dignified purpose. The connection was immediate and visceral, two warriors recognizing something essential in each other. Kevin knelt, his hand trembling slightly as he reached toward the massive dog. Titan bridged the final distance, gently pressing his scarred head against the young man's palm. "He knows," Kevin whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Somehow he knows." Inside, the center hummed with activity. Eleanor Thompson, appointed volunteer coordinator at her insistence, was directing a group of senior citizens who helped with administrative tasks and basic dog socialization. Her living room furniture now occupied what had once been James's dining room, creating a welcoming space where prospective adopters could interact with rescue dogs. Logan Reed, now confidently verbal and serving as the center's youngest volunteer, was reading to a recently rescued German Shepherd mix. The therapeutic technique that had helped him find his voice now helped other children connect with traumatized animals, healing flowing in both directions. Sarah Wilson conducted weekly veterinary clinics in the converted garage, providing free care to programmed dogs and discounted services for community members in need. Her professional standing had soared following her role in Titan's recovery and the subsequent exposure of Williams' tactical abuses. As James guided Kevin through the application process, Frank Miller, now officially Robert Keller's liaison to the rehabilitation program, arrived with a newly rescued Belgian Malinois from a disbanded private security operation. "Another survivor," he announced, leading the nervous dog toward the training yard. "Ready when you are, Sergeant." James watched as Titan approached the newcomer with gentle authority, demonstrating once again his remarkable ability to communicate safety to those who had known only fear. In that moment, James recognized the simple truth at the heart of their shared journey. Sometimes those who have suffered most deeply possess the greatest capacity for compassion and the wisdom to use it for healing rather than harm. The autumn sun caught Titan's fur as he guided the newcomer around the yard, the scarred warrior showing another soul the path from darkness into light. Sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as challenges we never asked for. Titan's story reminds us that second chances aren't just for the young, they're for anyone brave enough to open their heart again after disappointment or loss. When James Anderson rescued that scarred German shepherd, he thought he was saving a dog. Instead, he found a purpose that renewed his own damaged spirit. We all carry invisible scars, memories of times when life tested our strength and resolve. But like Titan, our wounds don't define us. They simply mark the battles we've survived. The most beautiful souls are often those who've weathered the harshest storms, yet still choose kindness. When was the last time someone unexpected brought healing to your life? Or perhaps the better question is, who needs the gift of your understanding today? Someone who knows pain can recognize it in others and offer the compassion that only comes from walking a difficult path. Share with us in the comments about a time when an unexpected connection changed your perspective or brought joy back into your life. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.